Ask Tom Gibson to lead us in a pledge of allegiance, and I'm going to ask Commissioner McClung to say a prayer for us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us pray. Dear Lord, we just ask you for guidance. We ask you for wisdom and discernment, Lord. Lord, just let us be men about the business of the city. We're just going to give you the praise and the glory for all in your name. Amen.
Amen. So I call this meeting a special meeting to order. Jim, are you taking the lead?
I can, Mayor. The first item we have tonight to address is the wastewater lagoon study. It's an item that we've looked at over the last couple of months. What we have is a proposal from the State Revolving Fund, if you flip over to your handout that we've looked at before, that indicates what they would do for us as far as the lagoon study. Currently, SRF has indicated that they would give us a 38% grant, $108,000 loan in order to work on the study itself. Today, the big deadline is the 10th of this week. They are requesting that we get back in a completed loan application, is what the email says that we had initially for today for you to consider. You also have Mr. William Harrison here, who's actually representing Eastern Shipbuilding, and Ron Rogers, also too, the engineer that's representing Eastern Shipbuilding here today. I think they want to do a presentation to you or talk to you briefly about it.
Sure. Come on up, John.
I'm not sure about a presentation, but my name is William Harrison. I'm from Panama City, outside counsel for Eastern Shipbuilding Group. Ron Rogers is an engineer with Eastern. So we've had some conversations with the city manager about the proposal from SRF. I understand the possibilities and the concerns related to this facility. Give you a little bit of background. Eastern entered into a lease with St. Joe Company a number of years ago. Ron and I were talking about it coming over. I can't remember how old that lease is, but maybe 5 or 6, 7 years old, maybe. Where we lease waterfront property from the St. Joe Company, a lot of the old mill property, not the entire parcel, but a good piece of it. And then when the port property got into some into the litigation and so forth, we had a lot of discussions with the port and with the bank about that property, and ultimately Eastern purchased that property. And so that is really two essentially contiguous pieces that are strategically valuable for the type of work that Eastern does. Now, another question that came up from the city manager was about the inspection and consideration that we've given to properties up and down the canal, which we have done a good bit of work over the years looking at those different parcels. There are different issues and so forth, depending on the type of vessels that we would want to launch or to outfit here in St. Joe. That affects the usefulness of those properties, how much depth we need, how much berthing space that we need, and so forth. A lot of the vessels that we need to outfit draw a lot of water, which we can't use the canal for that. We would have to do significant dredging. And I don't know at what point that becomes a problem for the shoreline in the canal, and where does it start to deteriorate the shoreline. So there's only a certain amount of depth that we can gather if we were to move further down the canal. So those were some of the concerns. The bluff, the elevation and so forth, and the amount of land that would have to be removed in order for us to get to sea level and then to dredge below that becomes more of a problem as we move towards the coastal. So that makes this property more attractive. The other thing that is consideration for us is the depth of the property. You may be familiar with what we do in Bay County. There are 2 yards there. One is at Allenton, the other one is at Nelson, which is essentially in town on Watson Bayou. The Allenton parcel is where most of the manufacturing takes place, and that is really where the bulk of the employees are. We currently have about 1,800 employees in those 2 yards. Most of those are at Allenton, where most of the manufacturing occurs. The bulk of the outfitting occurs either at Nelson Street or on property that we lease, and a pier that we lease from the paper mill. The outfitting, takes a good bit of water, because the vessels, start to be loaded down with all the equipment. But there are not as many employees involved in dealing with outfitting as there is, with the manufacturing side. Manufacturing, components, in order to go from the raw sheet metal all the way to where we have welded pieces that are ready to be set in jigs, that is a pretty long building, and that's not something that we could put on the St. Joe company piece that is leased where the deep water is. But there's a possibility for that because of the depth of the property there on the canal, that we could use that piece of property for the types of the plasma cutters and the welding machines and the Wheelabrator and so forth could fit on that piece of property. Now, some of the conversations I've had, with previous commissioners, with county commissioners, with the port, what is the future of manufacturing and so forth, and what is the possibility of us being able to create opportunities for growth in Port St. Joe and Gulf County. We are currently competing for a $10.5 billion contract with the Coast Guard. You may have read about that in the local newspaper. We will know more about that. The end of 2016 is if the Coast Guard keeps on their current schedule, we'll know how that is going to be awarded at that time. There's competition all over the country for that. The Coast Guard is downlisted to 3 companies, and we're one of the 3 companies. We're the only company in the state of Florida. There's one in Louisiana and one in Bath, Maine. And so clearly that is a huge contract, and that is something that would create an enormous amount of work for probably 20 or 25 years. And so where is it that we can conduct all of that work? And so there are restrictions in Bay County for where we can locate and where we can build, where we can expand our facilities. Some of that is related to the classification of water, where we have Class 3 waters in Bay County. We also have Class 2 waters where we can't manufacture, on those classified waters. And so it makes Gulf County attractive, not only because of the classification of the water of the canal, but also because of the existing depth there at the old mill. So when we look at all of those things, what is it that we need to really prosper here and be able to create jobs and to justify the expense of an incredible amount of capital investment that would be necessary to build the facilities for the construction and manufacture of these vessels. Permitting is a concern. Waterfront is a concern. We have also concern concerning related to workforce. Probably 2 years ago, we were here trying to determine how much workforce was available, post the shutdown of the mill. A lot of the pipe fitters and the welders and electricians and so forth that were the backbone of this community and that mill for so many years sought work, in other places, or they transitioned into other jobs, doing different things. And so there is a workforce challenge, that you're aware of that we would need to overcome. But if we get to the point where we have to have expanded facilities and we don't have other options, then whether the workforce here is not, or not, this is gonna have to be, on top of the list of consideration. And it will just, necessitate the employees coming here from wherever they come from. Now, you have seen that we do a lot of advertising, all over the Panhandle. If you drive on I-10, you can see some of the billboards that we have there, advertising on television and so forth. It is a challenge for us to find qualified employees and Class A welders, that we need to do the type of work that we perform. And so we have a good relationship with Gulf Coast State College. We have talked to them about the possibilities in working through the branch here in Gulf County. And so there are various different options, but frankly, those remain big challenges for us right now, because we can't come down here and open something up and expect there to be a line out on the sidewalk, people waiting to get work. And so this is the beginning of a long process that I understand you have concerns about and we have concerns about it. Whether, this is, a futile effort for all of us, or whether it is something that is a great opportunity remains to be seen. We don't want to put you in a situation that is going to worsen your condition with investment in infrastructure, or investment in anything that is not going to give you a return that is best for the people of the city of St. Joe. So we understand that, and we don't want you to be in that situation. We also don't want to be in the situation where we are expending a lot of sums, investing in potential that also doesn't give us a return on investment where we can use the property, for what we need to use it for. And so this opportunity in looking at the former industrial lagoon for the paper mill, which, you currently feed with your domestic waste, the operational cost of that, are probably great. I don't know what that is. There are challenges, in the life cycle of that facility, and whether you want to keep paying that over a long period of time. And is it feasible for us to convert that, in partnership to a launch facility, an inland basin, if you will, where we can do a side launch, from the property that we have recently acquired that is immediately adjacent to the lagoon, so that we can launch into a basin, do work there, and then eventually, take the vessels out of the canal and over to the property at the mill. Now, some of the analysis that we did, and we had discussions with the port early on, I guess a number of years ago, when we looked at the port property as a potential site for launching into the canal. Of course, the big concern is there, the berths there at Rathfields. And I've had a lot of conversations with Eugene about that and his family. We don't want to create any problems for them in those launches. The launches are violent. And if you've never seen one, I would encourage you. You can look on YouTube, and there are probably hundreds of examples of that. And so that is not a viable option for us to launch into the canal, even if we can deepen it enough, because it's going to not only, affect the vessels. If we remove the vessels, it's going to affect those buildings over there if we launch, across the canal. And so one of the things that we have envisioned is looking at a side launch that would go into the current industrial lagoon and contain all of that wave action and the hydraulic reaction to the launch within that basin. And if we can do that in a way so that the entrance into the canal is far enough removed, and there's some sort of attenuation so that it's not a problem for Eugene and any of the vessels that are there, along that canal. That's something that we have to look at, which is of course not necessarily part of this study, but there are a number of different issues, that we need to look at. But before we look at that, we just need to see whether this is a viable option. Is it a good idea, for the city? You know, is it, you know, long-term for domestic waste, you know, being put into, the industrial basin? You know, what are your options? You know, I don't know what those are. I've dealt with a lot of wastewater issues in Bay County and dealt with the industrial lagoon over there a good bit. And so maybe there are some cost savings for you if you can reduce the size of that. What does it cost to get you there? I don't know the answer to that. You know, the engineers can tell us that. Can we get some assistance from SRF or from DEO? You know, will the state come in and be helpful because of the jobs that we have, the ones that we want to maintain, the ones that we want to create? You know, going back to the net ban in '94 and looking at the challenges with the paper mill, you know, dealing with, you know, the jail annex that, you know, the Department of Corrections would not even recognize existed, even though it was brand spanking new with the sticker still on it. The state has tried in the past to be helpful to Gulf County, and we need to provide them with options and opportunities to be helpful, and I believe that they will be. Now, what is the extent of that? When they look at a partnership between the city and Eastern, I don't know what that is, and I can't represent to you today what the magnitude of that assistance would be. I know I can tell you, you know, whether it's the federal government or the state government, they try to do everything they can do to be helpful to Eastern. You know, every politician that you've ever heard of loves to go over there and roll around on the ground, and the success and the activity that occurs at Eastern. Now, whether that equates to help here, you know, with this project, I don't know. But what we're considering today, from my understanding, is whether or not this board decides to put in its notice and its application to SRF that we want to enter the process to go into further discussions with them, with probably a deadline in February or March for us to actually being obligated to move forward with a loan agreement, you know, accepting the grants and the conditions and so forth. And so what we would request today, if you're going to give this further consideration, is that we look at moving forward in notifying the state of our combined interest in this application. Of course, we can't do that because we're a private entity, you know, and so we would suggest that there would be a partnership of some sort that we can define at a later date, in working together where we can put money into this, you can put money into it, the state can put money into it, and collectively we can decide, you know, with the analysis of the engineers, is this a feasible option for us to pursue in the future? Now, whether the scope is appropriate at this point, I don't know that. You know, our preference would be to have further discussions, you know, with the city, you know, with the state, with the engineers about whether the scope is too expansive at this point for what we need to do to qualify for the SRF funds. We would like to put in as little as possible, and I know that you would like to put in as little as possible. We are willing to join you in this effort. You know, and the big question is, you know, let's say that it comes back and it's feasible and we can do it. You know, if I were in your seat, I would be saying, well, that's fine and dandy. How in the world are we going to pay for that? And so I don't want to go put, you know, tens of thousands of dollars towards a project that ultimately is going to come back and land in your lap where you're going to have to spend millions of dollars to go, you know, create this inland basin. I understand that concern. So to address that, what I would suggest to you is that our interest is to have an inland basin that we can use for industrial manufacturing, for outfitting, and the types of work that we do. We need an industrial facility to do that. This basin is probably one of the best options that we have in Bay County and Gulf County, in looking at both of those. What is the cost of doing that? I don't have any idea. I couldn't tell you within $2 million what it is. I have no idea. But if we can get past this, and it is feasible, and it is useful to you with your domestic wastewater facility, And it would be helpful to you in the ultimate costs that are passed on to your domestic users that are having to pay to run that lagoon as a whole right now. If that is beneficial, and it is something that is beneficial to Eastern, so that Eastern can come in and make the financial commitment, whether it is through grants, whether it is legislative appropriation, whether it is through capital investment from Eastern, or a combination of those things. Eastern is interested in considering all of those things and leading the charge to accomplish all of that. But and so there's two caveats to that. One is, what is the ultimate cost, and the feasibility of all that. Some of that is engineering, some of it's permitting, some of it is the removal of the sediment that I'm sure is there in the basin, which likely will have to go to a certain landfill, because, who knows, what's in the sediment. So that's one concern. The other concern is that we don't want to set up that industrial basin for a potential competitor. So if we go through all of this analysis and we spend the money and take the risk and so forth, ultimately, if we get all of this stuff, permitted and constructed, then we want to be able to control what happens there if we're going to have a sizable investment in that. Now, I think that your council can attest to this probably better than me, but I think that it will be important as we move forward that there is a partnership between the city, possibly the county, possibly the Port Authority, possibly the state, and Eastern, in bringing together all the different interests in this. We want to be able to control the use, because we don't want to set up a competitor. We don't want to take all the risk and hand it over to somebody else. At the same time, you want to make sure that the interests of your constituents are taken care of, and the well-being of the city as a whole is considered as part of it. And so we don't want to damage that or jeopardize that whatsoever. Because ultimately, a strong city government, a strong county government is something that is going to be necessary as we move forward. It may be a number of years from now, but ultimately, if the community is not strong, if the county structure is not strong, then it's going to be difficult if all of this works and we need employees and so forth that are going to reside here. They're going to need fire, police, utilities, schools, all of those kinds of things are going to be important. And so we don't want to damage all of that in trying to go explore the potential of, this potential project. So anyway, I've sprayed you with a fire hose on a lot of different things. I'm happy to take any questions. Ron Rogers is here from an engineering perspective. He's familiar with the kind of work that we do at Eastern. Can answer probably some technical questions. But that is kind of the long and short of what we're looking at.
William, you've touched on most every concern, positive and negative, that you and I, of course, discussed previously. And of course, we're looking at this giant black hole at the end of this study that we have no idea what that's going to mean for us. I talked to staff. Staff has some concerns about shrinking the size of the lagoon going forward. Actually, making it more expensive for us to run a smaller one than it is the larger one, as well as the future capacity that we may need, and we kind of already obligated ourselves.
Right.
And with the Windmark situation, so I guess the crux of this whole thing is you guys want us to authorize a study and make a loan for this study to help possibly bring jobs in. We don't know what part or how much of the lagoon that you're looking at. That's another thing. We're going to shrink it by 3/4 or half or what have you. I
Right.
don't know how much property, I hadn't heard how much property you're gonna need for this basin. Does the engineer have any idea what, how much of the property, you'll need?
Ryan can speak to what we have at Allenton. You know, some of this, when you look at the wastewater treatment plant, and certainly I defer to the engineers, but, you know, in a former life, I dealt with the Military Point wastewater treatment lagoon over at Military Point at Tyndall. So I've got, you know, I played engineer on TV, so I'm a little bit conversant in this. You know, a lot of the issue has to do with whether you're gonna continue to have a surface water discharge for the domestic waste, or whether there's some sort of an overland flow. You know, do you spray it, you know, somewhere, you know, upland, or do you continue to put the waste into the water? And so those are, what we did over there is there's a split. You know, some of that goes to Tyndall Air Force Base, it sprays on Tyndall and on the golf course, and some of it, you know, goes into San Andreas Bay. Whatever is the, you know, the preference that you have, and some of that is you know, whether you're gonna have a top tier, treatment facility, you know, where you're gonna try to remove, you know, all of the nutrients and,
Yeah, of course,
All
all that requires more money and more, change in our present system, and that's what concerns me going forward. What's that gonna cost us to basically retrofit our current plant? And of course, I don't believe we put anything in the water anymore. We spray everything, so when, we're a little different than obviously Tyndall, but.
okay, well, that's good.
Yeah.
You know, one thing that was helpful when we were dealing with, you know, the 4 cities in the county, Mexico Beach and all that, is that there was a tremendous amount of money available from the state to make those changes, because what we had was basically a tertiary system that was haywire and you know, 5-gallon buckets is what it sounded to me like. Now, what you have, I don't know what you have. I don't know where the state would like for you to go. You know, as far as the state's interest in dealing with environmental programs and DEP funds, which is where the SRF funds come from, or from DOT, which has funds for the port, you know, for any type of transportation and, you know, water traffic. You know, that is a possibility. Dealing with the legislature, you know, for direct appropriations, you know, which there was a $5 million appropriation a number of years ago, but it was to the St. Joe Company, you know, for the improvements to the bulkhead. So ultimately that was vetoed. But if there is a comprehensive plan to deal with all those things, ultimately the city can't be left holding the bag. And we're not trying to accomplish that. We don't have enough information today to be able to say, here's what the options are. When you get to the end of the road, whatever the study may say, you know, it's a green light or a red light. We don't know that at this point. And I don't know that, and I don't know if anybody on your staff or the engineers know that. We're not trying to create a hardship for the city. You know, and so, you know, if you're thinking, well, what are the options if we don't do this? You know, what happens, you know, if the decision of the city is we're not gonna move forward, we're not gonna look at this, we have no interest in considering that, then it is probably not something that Eastern is gonna pursue on its own, because as far as the basin is concerned, because it is your, you know, your infrastructure, it's your property, it's your facility, and without, you know, there being some relationship between Eastern and the city, you know, we can't just go in there and start studying and considering, you know, well, wow, if we had the city's property, you know, we could do this, that, or the other. And so there's gotta be, you know, some cooperation there about, you know, considering the next step. If ultimately the city says, we wanna leave this basin just like it is, and we don't wanna change it whatsoever, then Eastern would have to consider whether it takes away part of its property, you know, that is, you know, the current upland. Is there enough property there to create a basin there? Or do we not create a basin whatsoever and not have a facility here for launching? So those are the different options, and I'm not saying, it isn't the end of the world if you say you don't want to proceed with it. It just is, you know, affecting what the options are, so.
Mr. Harris, how many, say you had a launch facility here, what do you project the number of workers for that, to operate a facility, you know, to build a ship from the ground up?
Well, that's a $64,000 question. And so, you know, if you look at.
What do you have at
I
Allentown
can
now?
just tell you,
Right.
you know, at Allenton, there are probably, I would say 1,200, you think, Rose? Yeah, so there's about 1,200 there. The outfitting facility at Nelson, and there is some launching at Nelson, you know, but there's probably, you know, I would say 600 at Nelson. Now, of course, either of those, y'all would be happy if I said, you know, 100. You know, because that's when we started this originally, we were hoping that we could find 100 Gulf County, you know, St. Joe employees in the working facility, which, you know, we struggled to do that.
You do have some Gulf County employees that are working in Allentown, don't you?
Yes, we do.
I always think about
Thank
that,
you.
you know, and I understand the job situation, getting people to work, but I'm a firm believer, like Mr. Ratfield is, if you build it, they'll come. We built the paper mill, they have people to run it, but they came from all over. Had a very successful time, our town grew. Now we don't have any industry, and our town is dwindling, because we've got high school students that have to leave every year to go find good jobs. And you know, we have several students now
Yeah.
going to the welding school in Jacksonville. So we've got an interest in, we've talked to our welding instructor out at the high school program, you know, that we need some good welders. And, I personally want to do everything I can to get you here. When I ran for this office, I said my first thing to do was get jobs for
Yes, sir.
people here in this town, and I still believe that, and I'm gonna do everything in my power to do it. I'm only one person, but that's the way I feel. So, Jim, how much is this study gonna actually cost the city right now?
The estimated cost is $175,000. Of that, 38% right now currently is grant. The loan amount would be $108,325 based on the estimated.
Now, Jim, almost 67,000 though would be grant, that would be debt forgiveness, so we would not be.
That is
No, but still, net is 108. The net loan is 108.
correct, based on the estimated cost of this.
What we would actually pay on would be 108.
But if I could interject here, I don't want to focus on that complete amount. Because really what we're considering is whether we notify the state, tomorrow, I guess it is, or Thursday, that we're interested in pursuing this and getting, you know, being qualified and getting on the list and submitting an application. What I would like to do after, if you decide to do that, I'd like to have a conversation with you and with engineers about affecting the scope and whether or not we need to do $170,000 worth of work right now, because there may be some things that are threshold questions that need to be answered before we go look at other things. Because if ultimately, you know, step 1 and 2 can't occur, then we don't need to go look at how do we go change all these other things and pay for something that's gonna be in a notebook that's sitting on the shelf.
But
Now, how much we can reduce that scope and that cost, I don't know, but we would like to have that conversation.
the bottom line right now is, we can back out of this thing in the
Until
long
March.
run. It won't cost us anything.
That's right.
And that's why I say it's a no-brainer to me.
Right,
You're not spending no money today,
that's right.
so.
Mr. Harrison, the one
Yes.
thing, comment I'd like to make is I also believe that if you build it, they'll come. We live in a community that has struggled since the mill has shut down. We've gotta have jobs, we gotta have good jobs. And the one thing I want you to be able to take back to Mr. Concernia is, this board is gonna do whatever we can to help you get to that goal. I don't think that any of us have the answers until we do have this study done.
Yeah.
I would like to see it come back, and let's maybe see if we can shave a little bit off that 175.
Yes, sir.
But guys, today, I'd like to see us move forward with at least a study. Come March, this thing, we found out more information, we don't feel comfortable with it, we don't have to owe it to the people of our community that need jobs, that want their children to have a place to at least look at it. And that's where I'm at today, is for us to at least look at this thing. You know, we may get a green light and still not be able to move forward on it.
That's right.
But we gotta know. And the first step is let's at least move forward with the application today, see what we can do. I'll put that in the form of a motion, Mayor, that we move forward with the application today.
Well,
Second for discussion.
a motion from Commissioner, second from you, let's go with it. Discussion.
Now, Jim, I'm gonna say again that the 67,000 will be debt forgiveness. In other words,
That is based on,
blank, go through the steps.
that's based on what they did was they gave you 38% forgiveness, so if you do adjust the loan, if it goes up or goes down, that 38% could change. But yes, sir, that is, right now, that is based on 66,675 is the, grant portion of that.
So we take that money, Mr. Mazzarino comes in and kicks in some money, we're not gonna be borrowing 175,000 ourselves, is what I'm
If you,
saying.
if you change the loan amount, to my understanding, the grant amount changes. So if you only borrowed $100,000 and you're only gonna get $38,000.
Well, what I'm saying, yeah, what I'm saying though, if you borrow the whole 9 yards, you can pay
Correct.
back the money.
Correct.
If you got, you know,
That is correct.
so,
That's the way I understood it, Commissioner.
If what you're saying, if Eastern's willing to put in a little money, we'll be net neutral.
Well, in prior conversations too, that being said, that, you know, Eastern's gonna help us get there. Come March, hopefully by then, we'll have some harder figures. But if we're gonna change the scope, we don't even need to throw a number out there yet.
I'm fine.
Any further discussion on the board? Anyone in the audience like to say anything about this before we vote?
You wanna say anything?
Only comment I wanted to make was, I think from, Raphael Fisheries perspective is, me and William has talked a lot, I've talked to Brian, and I know that they're a company that's gonna do what's right, so I'm on board with Eastern. What my concern is, being across the canal, is that when these studies come out, we must all not forget that Raphael and Woods Fisheries are the only two businesses on the other side of that canal that has to have proper draft structure of the seawall. That we're at 30 feet, 12 to 14 foot draft. At present, Army Corps of Engineers manageable draft. What that means is, if they require more depth, then we'll have to have something done on our side, not to where we get undermined. That's the biggest concern I have.
And that's why we want you in on the process, Eugene, I think.
Well, we'd have to be, I mean, it's, we've got to protect our side, but let me say this. All of these things if we work together, we can get more accomplished, because there's a lot of the unknowns. We can't sit here and not afford to do some studies we gotta have jobs.
Right.
And jobs are not gonna come here free. It's gonna cost somebody some money to get them here. Speaking as port chairman, I can tell you that it's not free. And then the other side of the coin is, we have to be careful when we need the county as well. We need all work forces together with the Eastern Shipyard and all of us, but we need to look at the availability of the land where your pond, your starts and their property starts, that Chicken House branch, how wide that is, and how big the vessels that Eastern's gonna be doing down the road. Are they big enough to go in from a north-south entrance versus a west-east entrance? I don't know if that makes any sense, William, but your length it's got a 400-foot depth. It ain't gonna go north and south. It's gonna end up in Highland Santa Jean's front yard. We don't want that. But I'm just saying is, I think it's doable if we will take the baby steps and make sure that the city financially doesn't get hurt. If we're gonna pay off down the road, it's gonna be the bigger thing. But from me speaking from the Raphael side, and Woods is not here, I don't think, but we don't need to have any kind of undermining issue on the other side. And same way with y'all, you gotta make sure you're protected. You don't have, this stuff is vital. William said it right. Go to one of these launches.
I seen one.
It's something to see now, I'm telling you, but we support Eastern, from the port as well as our family. We've got a boat, the second boat that they ever built in the history of Eastern Shipyard, we own it, and it's the sister ship to the Adrian Gales on the Perfect Storm. So now that's the first boat that still survived, you know where the Adrian Gale is. But that's my biggest concern is the, draft, I think, of the depth of that seawall.
Well, Eugene, I envision a lot more of these workshops with all parties that are interested. I can see a lot of that happening between now and March as well.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Likewise, motion passes 5-0.
Appreciate your time.
Mayor, the next item we have is a reference to a lift station on Parker Avenue. Mr. Grantley's gonna talk to you today about it. We've got some problems that we've encountered yesterday that we're gonna need some guidance from you on.
Well, basically, Mayor and Commission, what you've got in front of you is a quote, the work with this particular lift station that, has seen its better days related to hydrogen sulfide. Essentially, the gas in this lift station is corroded the discharge pipe off the point where, it needs to be replaced. We split one discharge pipe about 4 months ago. The second occurred Monday, so what you have is that price, for the contractor to come in and replace that steel piping with HDPE. And, hopefully we won't be back at this particular station, but I would like to advise the board that the secondary station at Howardview, which is Marlin Street, is having the same price.
What street?
Marlin.
How long has that lift station been, sir?
I believe they were constructed in 2007 or late 7 or early 8.
So it's less than 10 years old. What can we do to make it better? I mean, let's face it.
Well,
10 years from now, we're gonna
there's
probably look
different
at
types of-
75,000.
Well, there's different types of methodology that you could use. You got injection, to perhaps, provide nutrients, and then it's probably, it's a little easier to even, feeding the waste to keep it from going in the river.
Not in, well,
Well, you've got monoxide.
talking about
in
in the lift stations before it comes to us.
Well, we're talking about reducing hydrogen sulfide. So that, scrubbers, there's different options. The scrubbers are expensive.
Yeah, well, it's all expensive. The chemicals are expensive. It's just a constant maintenance
But
thing.
I guess my thoughts and questions are, what can we do to put better materials in there that may not,
Steel was a bad choice.
go out as fast as.
Which is why we're
7 years.
recommending HDPE might be put back in.
That'll make a difference.
That should- Oh, yeah.
The stations themselves are lined.
So the different piping's gonna make the difference to a point, so.
That's correct.
Is this price range okay to you?
I would say yes, and the reason being is because that, system over there in its entirety is low pressure. So there's not an on-off switch, there's no other way to bypass since everything comes, off individual houses, so it's a little different. That's one of the most expensive components of that particular quote you have, would be setting up a bypass, which means physically installing the structure to do that with. Rerouting the current piping to that structure. Then once the construction is complete, routing it again back to the station.
There's none of this, John, that we could do in-house. There's a little bit, not really. Guys, I hate doing anything without bids, but I talked to John earlier about this, and I don't think we have time. It's kind of an emergency type deal.
And you said it's still 2 weeks out, even if we accept it.
When I spoke with the person who provided the content of that bid today, yes, it was open in 2 weeks. It could be on.
Are we looking at catastrophic failures or just gonna stop working?
Well, it's not working now, so it's already stopped.
Backup or?
They usually got to build a pump.
What we have out there right now is our Thompson bypass pump.
Yeah.
And that's what we've got. It's mechanical, it's tending to on a regular basis.
There are no real specs here on this quote as far as you're talking about replacing piping with something you just called it, but that's not here. I'm certainly.
And that was
like to get all that-
conversations, correct. There's nothing written.
All that in writing, so we'll know that
We can
we're
do
gonna
that.
get the best thing that'll last the longest for the next folks that come around. So, as far as paying for it, we've got a few little pots of money sitting around, and borrow a phrase from the BP people. Of course, we have real funds that we can get our hands on, that we don't yet.
imagine that.
We still got, what, 8.6 thousand?
My thought was, we've got, I think, a pot of money from the Headworks, cleanup fund that we got from Arizona, is that right?
We took a little bit out of
We
that.
took some of it out
How
of
much
it.
is, yeah.
That's
That was
where,
150
to me, that's
originally.
a more appropriate place to get this money than the Cape Sewer thing, cause we're gonna, we're obligated with that money, it's been obligated.
You would still have the expense that you would show out of a line item or new one you would create, but yes, sir, you could bring it out of that segregated bank account.
I think we took some money out to fix that pipe over in that treatment plant that we live in.
Yeah,
That's what it was.
27,000.
27,000.
Yeah.
Seemed like we still have, roughly $100,000, $120 maybe. Is that
You know, was there 150 in there originally?
Seemed like it was
I think so.
150.
Yeah.
There's 150 to start with.
And Jim, that's where we were planning on getting it from. If we don't take it out of that, we were gonna get it out of the Cape Sewer.
That's the one we were looking at today. We was talking with Mike, and we were looking, we put some money, if you look at the one sheet I gave to you, in our capital outlay for this year. We listed several lift stations, but not this one. And all the money, we still wanna try to keep those intact, because we know those have problems as well. The Cape Sewer line, we did put in $120,000 this year. We spent roughly 21 or 22 on the Long Avenue evaluation, so you have $100,000 in there.
You're looking at budget items, I was
Yes.
thinking about the other case.
Segregated bank account. But you could use that if you wanted to, but what you would do is you would still have to create your line item. But what we could do is we could transfer that out of that segregated bank account into your operating account in the sewer fund.
What's in the segregated account, Jim?
I wanna say it was, I think you're right, I think it was 150 and we used about $20,000 or $30,000 on there, I believe, so.
That was the cleanup money.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, that you got from Arizona Chemical, and that is free and clear because
Well, I
that
agree
feeds
with
process.
Commissioner Brazil, we don't need to take any more money out of that Cape Sewer thing, because we have several things on the thing.
We like, that's a money generating.
I know, that, we're
line
gonna get
item.
something in return for that.
Y'all had a couple people that was having some smell problems in Highland View, could that be condition?
It's possible, it's possible.
Yeah.
I don't know what areas you were speaking of, it would have to be fairly close, to that station, so.
Well, I think we need to move forward, just where we're gonna get the money for it, so the question now.
We don't need to do a bid because of emergency situation.
You're fine with that.
Yeah, we just call it an emergency.
So I'll make a motion, we go ahead with this, bid once we get the line items a little more detailed.
Yes, sir, I will.
And we'll, transfer the money from the Headworks cleanup fund to a line item to pay for it. Such a motion.
I got a motion from Commissioner Brazil, second Commissioner McCrone. Have any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion passes 5-0.
Ms. Charlotte, wanted us to
I just
act on
put
something.
that up there for your review, just let us know Tuesday night if you need
Was there
to.
5 into that?
However y'all would like to do it, if you want to do it, I just put it so you'd be aware of it and you vote on it Tuesday night, or give us an answer.
So it's a total of
Last year
$281.
we paid
Yes,
for it out of BP funds.
Need a motion on that,
It's not on the agenda.
ma'am?
It's not on your agenda for today, so we
If y'all give us a consensus, since it's under our budget, if everybody can give us a consensus on there, you're not a formal vote.
Okay, that's fine.
All right, we'll do it.
All right, anything else?
Motion.
Need a motion to adjourn? Yes, sir.